Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Coding with Glove. My name is Glove. That's the new name of the channel. And in this video, we're going to be getting back into our distributed systems series. And we're going to be taking a look at ambassadors, which is a really cool thing. Kind of builds on top of what we talked about last time, which was the sidecar pattern. So let's take a look. So the first thing we need to ask ourselves, or kind of consider in general, is what is an ambassador? Like, what does that mean, right? And so in this case, an ambassador is another service or another container, perhaps, that brokers interactions between our application, which maybe is in a container or some sort of isolated environment, and the world around it, whether that world be, other services within, let's say, our cloud environment, such as AWS or GCP, or the internet at large. It doesn't really matter. It brokers the interactions between the application and the world around it that it lives within, right? So let's kind of see how that looks. Let's say that we have an app, right? And we have the internet, and we need to be able to talk to, like, from the internet to the app or vice versa, right? Let's say you go to a website, whatever site it is, you want to use the website, so you have to be able to talk to the server that holds that website, right? So internet to application. But let's say that for whatever reason, our application, maybe it's like a database or some sort of API or whatever it is, right? We'll get into that a little bit more in the later on in the video. But let's say that due to security reasons, we don't just want to make it accessible directly to the internet, because we kind of want to have it locked down so that we know that it's secure, we know who is going in and out of that application. So what we could do is we could have an ambassador, which basically only lets certain connections or certain requests through our application, right? And so we might do something like that. So let's take a look at some examples of an ambassador. The first example that I have for you guys is, let's say that we are sharding a database. And so what that means is that we're going to take a database and we're going to create different, sometimes you might also hear the word replicas used, which is, I'll just simplify it. Maybe it's the same data repeated a bunch of times, and so we want to basically make it so that you don't need to know where to send your request. You can send it to one place. So in this case, the ambassador would be a part of the service, whatever the API may be, or an API that kind of interacts or allows you to interact with your database. And it also makes the client development easy, and I'll show you a diagram in a second. And it also makes front-end connections to one back-end service, and so I'll also show an example of that in a bit as well. So this is a standard 3-tier architecture that you could go with for deploying your application. In the top, you have the application, right? That's what you might interact with on your web browser or on your phone. And then you have an API that sits in between the database and the application, so that the application is not making requests directly to the database. And then you'd actually have your database, and that would be your, let's say, EC2 instance or your server somewhere that houses and stores the data, right? But let's say that this database is growing too much, right? Let's say that the data is exceeding the capacity of this database or of the server, and you don't want to scale up, it's called, you want to scale out, right? And we're not going to go into the differences of those two things, but for better or worse, you're going to scale out instead of up. What you could do is we could have our application, we could then have our API, and then instead of having just one database, we might have shards. And so that API is then going to handle the requesting of where that data is, no matter what shard it's in, so that the application still just makes one request to a simple backend or a simple API, and doesn't have to worry about where the data is coming from. And so this makes things a lot easier, and I think this is probably how you'll see it most often. All right, let's talk about another example, and that is testing a new service. I thought about not including this because I thought the other one did a really good job of illustrating what we're talking about here, but I think this actually is a really cool example. So let's say that we have version 1 of our software, and it's running in production live on our server. Let's say then that we go and we create a new version of our software. Maybe it's version 1.1 or 1.2, or maybe down the road it becomes version 2. What we want to do is we want to allow ourselves to split and test the current requests that are coming in on a new piece of software before moving it into production and making everyone rely on that piece of software to work. So what we could do is we could have something like this, where we have our application, talks to our API, and then it talks to the production service, right? And then we could have a staging service where we basically stage the new version of our software, and we send some of, not all, but some of the requests to that new version to make sure, while still actually serving them as one of the production instance, but we slowly change where everything is going, and then perhaps production either becomes staging, right? And so these two things here, yes, you can still see my mouse perfect. These two things here flip-flop, right? So this would become staging, this would become production, or you have this here and then you just deploy this into your production environment, and then because you already tested it, that all of the resources will still work. That would be two different options of what you could do. So I hope this made sense. Let me know down in the comments if it didn't make sense, and I'll try and explain it. And that's pretty much it. So thanks guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and let me know down in the comments what you thought. Definitely throw me a like if you learned something from it, and subscribe if you want to see more. Take care. Peace.